Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the second of our roundtables in a series of 4. My name is Doug and I'm one of the co-founders of Intelligent People. If you don't know us, we're a specialist product recruiter with close to 20 years experience recruiting product talent up to board level. We provide permanent and interim services, both contingent and exec search, and roles include product design, product management talent up to CPO level, and more recently product operations. Please feel free to go to our website to look at any live roles. The theme today is how to build a high-performance products team. And we've broken this into 4 sections and have expert speakers on each. So I'd like to introduce and welcome James Routledge. James is the CPO of Converge, and he's going to provide insight on what does a high-performance team look like. Our second speaker is Arthur Leng. Arthur is the CPO of Shawcross Bank, and we'll cover the main challenges building a high-performance product team. The third speaker is Becky Yelland. Becky is the product director of Arenco Group, an owner of the Female Product Lead Group, and her subject is, what are the steps to building a high-performance product team? And our final speaker to round things up is Namrata Samar. Namrata is the CPO of Into University Partnerships, the founder of Women in Product UK, and the founding member of Chief. Nam will be giving us her insight on how to lead a high-performance product team. Our first topic is, what does a high-performance team look like? And you should hopefully be seeing a graphic now that's got some common traits of a high-performance team. Transparent, empowered, aligned, approachable and open, continuous improvement, customer-centric, decisive, and challenging. This isn't exhaustive by any means, but these are traits that are often mentioned as part of an overarching goal when we're being briefed on trying to build high-performance products teams. Our first guest speaker is James Routledge. James is the CPO of Converge. James, thank you for your time this evening. Would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So thank you for the kind introduction, Doug. So for a bit about me, I started my career almost 18 years ago, and I actually started in engineering. So I was one of the product people that found their way after they caused far too much mischief with code, sort of got pushed into it naturally. Then I was quite lucky. I got mentored by a man called Marty Kagan, who's quite famous for building sort of eBay and Netscape. And in taking my first product role, I actually was able to be part of a journey from sort of an MVP up to a $500 million exit. So it was wonderful to actually be part of a journey of seeing a product do that full life cycle. Since then, over the last 10 years, I've done everything from a number of years as a venture capitalist through to starting my own startups to having exits. But I've always had product through all of it. And more recently, I've really come to terms with the fact that product's what I love doing the most. And so when I think about this, I kind of have a lens on product that covers both the, if you like, the North American way of doing it and the very European way of doing it. So when we talk about high-performing teams, I like to try and blend those stories because product's quite different depending on where in the world you operate.
Really? Well, could you expand on that?
Yeah, of course. So it's probably the single most important thing I try and teach whenever I have people I look after in product, product managers. I sort of sit them down and I sort of tell the story of how it works to give some context. And so I would say the big difference is actually in how you build your entire product organization. So in the European style, there's a far more delivery-centric model. And if you like, product managers own roadmaps. They talk about the most impactful thing they might be able to move as a metric. They give it to engineering teams, and engineering teams deliver that in sprint form, right? Which is kind of classic. Most people listening in will probably have some element of that in their jobs. If you go to the high-performing teams in the US, it's a very different structure because they are very specific in terms of how they hire engineers. In this case, they hire engineers who have business sense. Product managers in high-performing teams in the US actually are more like cheerleaders. If you came in and told engineers what to do, they'd kick you out and say, no, we're the engineers. We'll tell you the requirements. You give us a mission worth going after. And so what you have here is more of a kind of a cheerleader, a customer evangelist. And engineers can almost self-organize what they think is the right way to deliver the right thing. So you can see it's a very different mindset, and that does exist in Europe as well. But building a high-performing product team isn't just the product person or the product management, it's how the entire function delivers value.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I've never really thought about that. I mean, I'm not a product manager, so why would I? But do you think one is more effective than another in, like, say, B2B or B2C, or?
So it's a really interesting question. I think when it comes to B2C and B2B, the same rules normally apply.
Yeah.
And that's that the more autonomy you can make in delivery, the more you normally can compound that out. So if you're constantly all trying to figure out a nitty-gritty requirement, less people are able to think ahead, right? So a classic sort of statement in product management is you should iterate in steps and think in leaps. But if you're constantly having to deal with all the little steps around you, it's really hard to start thinking about, is what I'm doing as a product manager compounding value, either for my business or for my customers? And so if you can get, if you like, the delivery to be as autonomous as possible, you can spend a lot more time thinking about the much harder, more unknown characteristics of kind of discovering or defining the most valuable thing you might do. And invariably, you actually end up deprioritizing more things and being far more evangelical with your customers because you can spend more time with them, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I've heard of that described as kind of upstream and downstream, where a product owner is, manages sprints, get stuff done, but the product manager spends 80% of the time doing experiments, MVPs, work with customers. Is that a good example of what you'd say? Is that very sort of American-centric sort of way of working, or?
Potentially. I mean, it's really it's much easier if you start thinking about new products teams. So
Yeah.
if you've got greenfields things you need to do,
Yeah.
when we're all involved in large product management streams with lots of stakeholders, it can be really easy to get stuck in, well, we've just got to get this done and we've got so many moving parts. If you just take what new product teams are able to do and try and figure out how to scale that into an existing product, that's when you start to see this really have an impact. Because obviously in new product teams, most of the things you think about are hypotheses. So you might say,
Yeah.
the engineers might say, oh, well, we need to spin up an environment. We'll just get that done. We don't need to talk to you about that. Let's get that done. Autonomy. Suddenly you might come up with some ideas. Some of them don't work. But engineers can start to think about, well, actually, we know what we probably need here. Let's just build capabilities. Let's get this going. And you can see that they're trying to autonomously make decisions for the best way to get from 0 to 1. If you take that mindset and apply it to existing products, that's when you start to see what we're talking about happen in more sort of high-performing West Coast teams.
So why would you say there's that difference then? Why is the US so different to Europe?
I mean, you end up with lots of cliches and hypotheses. So, Doug, I will generalize a few continents to see if it makes
I'm in
sense.
recruitment. I generalize all the time.
A lot of where product management came from in the US was actually out of the startup ecosystem that was obviously on the West Coast and then spread throughout. So they have a lot of 0 to 1 mentality. And we could go into, where Sequoia came from and how they backed engineers first. And there's a whole story around where that piece started. In Europe, a lot of where products started, it actually came out of the large programs we built. We're really good as Europeans at building large infrastructure projects. And so product management sort of evolved out of project management. So we had this concept of product owners. I don't think I ever saw a product owner in the US, right? But we made product owners because we had delivery managers. So you see how we kind of came from a delivery mindset as a tech industry. And that was that was a bit of a challenge. So that's the way that I would say there's a difference there.
Yeah. And what would you say is so that's the difference in terms of, I guess, setup and mindset. What would you say are the differences in like outcomes and outputs, like good and bad, because there's unlikely to be perfect, I guess.
Yeah. So, well, you get to a lot of ambiguity in terms of how a team wants to work. So I think that high-performing product teams can work both asynchronously or remotely and synchronously and in the room. Normally, in my experience, in terms of outputs, the team working well together to get something done, it's actually about a cultural point. So some people are very, very good at judging body language, understanding what's happening through a screen. Other people aren't. Another aspect of this in terms of high performing teams is that whenever I think about trying to build one of these teams, I try and hire people who over communicate by default. That really helps because then you don't have as many misunderstandings. People are emitting things. You get a lot more compounding because we're all sharing at the same time.
Mm.
Uh, if you're all in the same office, it's very easy to see when someone's quiet. You can kind of sidle over to them and say, "Well, what do you think?" Right?
Mm.
In a hybrid world, or when you need to move really fast and you can't all be in the same room at the same time, that can be super tough. And you all have to
Mm.
move together. Otherwise, your outputs won't be, 10x. They'll be 1x, 2x. So it's not bad. It's just if you want to make a high performing team, it's got to be really good at communicating. The easiest way to solve that is to over communicate.
Mm.
I think that's a big nuance point in terms of the nitty gritty, the tangible side of things.
Yeah.
It obviously depends on exactly what you're picking up. If you're diving into a large bit of platform work, then it's actually being able to think with a sort of a bias for action. Like, how
Yeah.
can I get something in place straight away? How can I build on that thing, but without making a big leaning tower of Pisa that falls over at the end? So
So that over communication thing, you sort of picking up on that. Do you think that's related to why some of the large, particularly American tech orgs, have this kind of we need to get back to the office? We've seen it with Salesforce recently, where the guy who runs Salesforce he's offering to give money to charity for every day you come back to the office. So is that because he's got this? I want to communicate with people, or is it a bit of a control thing, or a bit of both? Would you say?
uh, so I wouldn't say it's necessarily nuanced to large technology companies, but if we were talking about
Mm.
the challenges that large companies have and why they might not be high performing teams,
Mm.
and how they may be trying to manage that in different geographic structures, I think there's two
Mm.
parts. So one is that, speaking frankly, European employment law and US employment law are very different. So
Yeah.
in Europe, for context, if you haven't got the experience of both, European employment law will always slide with the employee. It's where we have really
Yeah.
good benefits. We understand HR, maternity, paternity, inclusion, all of these things. That's siding with the individual. In the
Mm.
US, it sides with the employer, which is why it's a high performance, fire fast mentality. We could go into a lot of different pieces here.
Mm.
But those are really big differences in terms of how to build a successful business. And speaking frankly, the laws and regulations that operate those types of companies.
Mm.
The other thing I would add, Doug, is that the assumption that large companies, or large technology companies in this case, are high performing teams is a little false, if I'm honest. When you have 110,000 people, I will be honest, some of those people are wonderful. They are the best
Yeah.
of the best. Let's agree that not all of them are. And if we were drawing a pyramid, there's quite a lot at the bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah.
If you have people in that category, bringing them all together and either coaching them or keeping an eye on them makes a ton of sense. So actually, if you are a
Mm.
large technology company where everyone's in one building, you really do get the compounding benefits then of having people who aren't high performers all together, because you can manage them better. And it's not the
Mm.
nicest thing to say, but speaking frankly, a high performing team doesn't need most of those points. And so I would argue that
Mm.
if you're trying to do this at scale, there's a lot of logical reasons statistically to bring a ton of people together. So I would
Yeah.
say that's the main bias for the activity.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, we can't all be upper quartile, can we? So, yeah. um, would you? Okay. So, could you give us some real life examples of what you would call high performance teams, and maybe
Yeah.
share what made them high performance? And I mean, maybe this company you worked for that went from the sort of the scale up. What made
Well,
it high performing? Who were they?
yeah. So I can think of a number of examples. Maybe one that's a bit more
Mm.
global, so more interesting. So I was asked to come in to help lead a key piece of a product in I think it's an 8 billion publicly listed big tech. So it's a 3,500 person company. I was asked to come in
Yeah.
and help with one of its products. This product was losing 7 figures a month, so it was not doing so well.
Okay.
And effectively, I was brought in under a challenge to say, well, either this is something we should keep and we can fix it, or this
Mm.
is something that's going to fail and we shouldn't have it anymore. You've got 90 days. So that's a good environment to say, well, high performing team is going to solve this. And
Yeah.
it was actually in payments, and this actually went from sort of processing 100 million to actually processing $250 million over a sort of a 6-month period. So massive turnaround.
Wow.
About 3 product teams in it. about 50 people all in with extensions and CX and the rest of it. The way that was able to make a turnaround, so the way that a high-performing team took that over, is there were essentially 3 key players that just leveled it up. Because that's the other thing. In high-performing teams, if you've got everyone as an all-star, epic. But you don't need everyone to make a high-performing team. You just need enough people to tip the index so that we can all kind of get momentum, right? And so what they were able to do is there were a couple of people who just overperformed, right? And one person was the design lead. The design lead sat down and they took a screenshot of every single bit of the product. And they did that across 3 different products, web, Android, and iOS, and they were all different environments made different ways. They literally mapped the entire universe and they explained where they were all different and what the problems were. So someone, that's not necessarily their job. They just put in the effort to take everyone on a journey to say, if we can baseline this out, we can make a difference. So we already have one player. The second person was the sort of business strategist / product director that was sort of with me on this. And this person overhauled all of the metrics. And they quickly took a step on where we could make bets and where we couldn't. And in a payments product, there's a lot of numbers. So it's a very, very data-centric thing. But it was about them, again, taking the lead, doing more than they could, that bias for action to kind of overperform. And then there was also the tech lead, and the tech lead across all of these products. He only sat in one, but he stepped across all of them, trying to figure out the tech debt of the lot, which is an insane task. But the point is that all of these people were moving way beyond just what you would classify as their role and responsibility. So when I sat down with them, they were able to tell a story, and we were able to kind of figure out what is the amount of change we can make in 90 days to really move the dial here. Because in an organization like that, you also have loads of inertia. Like they have integration teams because it's so hard for products to talk to each other. So we had to figure out how to dance around these very, very quickly to make 3 months worth of changes. I then communicated that up effectively to leadership / board to take them on to get conviction on it. So my little piece in this was, I will keep the conviction at the top. We have to move the dial in terms of taking something that doesn't work to fix it, to actually make it perform. And that's what a high-performing team did there. There were loads more people I mentioned, but that's what turned that into a high-performing team. It was their activities and behaviors.
So it's down to sort of Pareto law, isn't it? The 80-20 a little bit, but it sounds like you did something that unleashed the potential of those 3. And it sounds, I think, having those 3 in leadership positions, if you've got a design lead, a tech lead, and the data lead, they're in leadership positions already. Would you say they were high performing kind of before you got there, and did you just sort of strip some barriers away? So what flipped that then? What made the change there then?
Well, so firstly, I'll be honest, I'm a bit of a blunt object, Doug. I'm not going to lie. So I was willing to sit down with people and say, this is what it is. This is the situation of our product. This is the reality of where we are. This is where we want to get to. I think you can do it. Do you think you can do it? And actually getting people to be invested in the change was a big deal. I think also, as with companies of that size, you end up with a lot of dysfunction. And actually to champion people is a key part of a product leader in making a high-performing product team. And that's really important for them to really move the dial. They need to be protected, right? I think that a high-performing team can easily be stalled by internal bureaucracy or by someone that has their own political needs, right? And that can be everything from a 9-person company where it might be the founder and you need to kind of stop the founder interfering if that's the thing, or it could be up to a 3,000-person company, and then you have pick a number of VPs that you need to win over. I'm not going to say fight, but win over. So I think it was a mixture of things, getting them to buy into it, making sure that they were appreciated that they could do it, but also giving them the air cover and fighting the good fight so they didn't have to.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you for that. I think we are probably coming on to our next speaker now, James. Were there any sort of final thoughts you wanted to add, though?
No, I think that the biggest thing for me is that high-performing teams are obviously a mixture of different cultures and movements. And in my opinion, I see 3 things that I love to look for, aside from that over-communicating point. It's that bias for action. They go off and get things done. It's actually that they have vulnerabilities. They're willing to go out there and make mistakes, and you can catch them back to the air cover. And then it's actually that they are really keen to be successful more than they are comfortable, because then they'll always be challenging themselves.
I like that. That last one's a really good take. Thank you for that, James. That's been really informative. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Our next guest is Arthur Leng. Arthur is the CPO of Shawcross Bank, and his topic is, what are the main challenges faced building a high-performance team? Again, we should have some stats coming up shortly from UXCAM that will hopefully be on the screen. Here we are. And it talks about the main challenges that product managers say they face. The top 3 for product managers are competing objectives in the organization, a lack of time, and a lack of role clarity. 25% of product managers say the company's strategy is not clear. 26% say that product managers have a clear role, but other stakeholders in the business don't understand it. And this is a shocking stat here, but product managers spend 52% of their time on unplanned firefighting activities. So hi, Arthur. It's great to see you. Perhaps you could give us a quick introduction to yourself, and the floor's yours.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Doug. Hi, my name's Arthur. So I think my career in product really spans a number of years, over 15 years. A lot of it has been within financial services. So I started from a career in consulting and really sort of grown in or fell into product by accident, really, through a combination of technology, sort of love for technology, really sort of that combined with the business sort of sense, as well as just a love of design. And so I think so that probably speaks well to a lot of product folks. Over the last 10, 15 years, I have grown both products and product teams in a number of sort of various different sizes of organizations, all the way from very, very large banks to small seed stage startups, mostly in financial services and fintechs. And currently I'm CPO at Shawbrook. So we are a UK mid-tier challenger bank. We lend over 12 billion pounds to a wide number of various different focus markets where high street banks don't serve very well. I look after product design, engineering, and delivery. And so it's a nice sort of encapsulation from an end-to-end perspective of delivering products into customers' hands. So really, really glad to be here.
Thanks for that. So what would you say the main challenges building a high-performance team are?
Yeah, so a number of things that you put up on the slide just previously really resonated. I think one of the things that I would sort of theme up into that is around cross-functional collaboration. It's one of the most important day-to-day activity for a product manager, if you will. And if you don't sort of get that right, it really, really is a huge impediment. And I think there are a couple of key causes to it. One is around this misalignment of goals, I think, and really causing collaboration to suffer. And so that possibly, is one of those major contributions to the stats where, you showed over 50% is spent sort of firefighting, right? And we can get into a little bit of that. But another one that I kind of want to focus a little bit more on is around capabilities, right? So I think, high performance teams and, listening to sort of what James said, great people, when they come together, they naturally know, what their position is, what they're good at, and what great looks like, right? And I think, actually having folks that, potentially not quite sure, what great looks like. And some of it is not necessarily, the fault of the individual. Sometimes it's, the company's growing really fast, you're hiring in, folks that are, more inexperienced and learning on the job, if you will. And that could be a really good thing because, they grow with the company. But at the same time, as the company scales, they might not necessarily know, what great looks like or sort of other external focus and sort of views of the world. And so it's really important to sort of, hire great people and don't compromise on that so that I guess to what James also mentioned, you don't need, everybody to be star players. In fact, actually, sort of too many cooks in the kitchen, if you will, right? And so you need enough to be able to set the high bar and actually to bring other people along that journey with you. And if you're a leader of a number of different disciplines, you don't necessarily need to be the expert in everything. However, you do need to know what great looks like. So you do need to have your feelers, tentacles out there in the market, speak to really great leaders in those practices, understand how they build great teams, so that when you're looking to bring those people into your organization, you know what it is that you're looking for, you know what works for your organization. And so I think that's really important.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting because we often see sometimes you have to change the teams, right? You 0 to 1 might be a different team and different animal to your sort of post product market fit scale up. And I guess your challenge as a leader is how do you stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, so I think there are sort of different ways to kind of think about different frameworks to think about sort of different stages of growth in the company. And as you said, you could be very purist and say, well, I need this type of product manager for this phase of growth. But let's face it, in reality, you're never fit with the perfect model, with the perfect individuals, and at that stage in their career, and in exactly the right places. And so I think it's actually, continuing to, I think as a leader, it's very easy to almost sort of be very strategic and at the high level. However, I think actually really sort of, keeping your fingers on the pulse in terms of how the teams are growing, how not just your, direct reports, whether it's product managers or designers or engineers, but really sort of that cross-functional team. How are they growing? What are some of the challenges that they face? And as you mentioned, what kind of products are they trying to build? Is it a completely greenfield new product? Are they trying to optimize? Are you in a growth stage? And I think all of those things is really important to make sure that you have a talent plan, you have a roadmap to be able to actually give your team that runway to be able to actually grow in their career.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'd like to touch on some of the topics. How do you, as a leader and building a high performance team, how do you balance, scaling aggressively, high performance with mental health, work-life balance, burnout, and stress?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's definitely, especially with post-pandemic and sort of the flexibility that we are all benefiting from in terms of whether it's hybrid working, how often you go into the office, etc. And different companies will have different policies, different cultures around that. But I think one of the things that we at Shawbrook are really keen to emphasize is that flexibility. So we don't have a policy of you need to be in the office X number of days. And in fact, a lot of my leadership team are spread out over the country. Now, we also strongly believe that in-person collaboration is really important. And so we make an effort to say, look, we believe that getting together physically in person, that has real value, and we make a commitment to be able to do that. And different teams will has to come to sort of different agreements. Whether it's monthly, quarterly, etc. But I do think that actually being able to be flexible is really important. I think as a company, at different stages, I think it's important to say that not every company at certain stage is the right fit, right? And so I think if you're looking for your next job or your next company to go into, it's really important to think about what is that, not just the culture, but also what is the stage of growth? What is the, implicit expectations around, not really sort of, not the explicit policies, if you will, but, what is the culture? What is the expectations around, how much do you give your life to? And that it may be for you, maybe not. And I think that's really important to really suss out.
Yeah, and I do think I think we have to take off our rose sort of tinted spectacles. And I quite liked Mr. Stromsky's statement maybe 18 months ago at Revolut, where he effectively said work-life balance isn't compatible with what we're trying to do here. We're trying to break a market. We need hyper growth, hyper acceleration. And Elon Musk's done the same thing at Twitter. And again, he's a bit of a pantomime villain to many people. But there's some honesty in terms of what he said. Marissa Mayer said it, back when she took over Yahoo. I think, I recall a report where she effectively got some product teams in and said, look, you've said it's going to take 6 months to do this. You need 2 weeks to do it, or I need to get me a team that does it. So I think that honesty is good. You just got to know what you're signing up for, really, and I'm not sure.
I agree. Honesty on both ways, right? And I think too often I see, it's not necessarily transparent enough, right? And it's not the fault of any one, whether it's the candidate or whether it's the company, but I do think that it does need to start off with more transparency in terms of what's expected, and I have strong views in terms of balance and flexibility. But I also understand, some companies are built, some, quite successfully in other manners. And, that's not to say it never works, but I can also say, a lot of, in this day and age, especially with, how we think about mental health, how we think about well-being. There are so many companies out there that are extremely successful, high performing, but actually offer that balance as well. So you can have both.
So would you? I mean, and you can have that. You're absolutely right. How important do you think it is to foster a growth mindset in the team?
I think growth mindset is one that spans across regardless of culture and the flexibilities and policies and all of that, right? Because I think in terms of that mindset is critical to be able to build great products. So whether it is actually building a culture of experimentation, whether it is building psychological safety within the team, so that there is, and I think I saw in terms of the traits that you mentioned, being decisive and being challenging. You can only be sort of both and more if you have the environments where people feel safe to call out something that they disagree with, or how about this, and actually it's more than just calling out. It's actually just the receiver actually being able to listen and be able to actually I might be wrong, that idea might be better, right? And so just being able to also as a leader show vulnerability around that as well is really important, I think, to foster that growth mindset.
Well, we see that, and I think often evidence-based decision making is the important thing, and leaving egos at the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I have learned, in the short sort of year and a half, 2 years that I've been with this company, is that high performing product teams is just the start in a way, because for a bank like Shawbrook, a lot of what we do in a cross-functional way permeates across the organization. And actually what we're doing is actually leading a transformation for the entire company. So it's not just the product managers, it's not just the people who are building the digital experience and the product, but it goes across into our risk, into our finance, into all of these other areas. And this is just a vehicle and just a catalyst to actually bring about change. And we talk about, I think it's a bit cliche to talk about digital transformation nowadays. We're in 2023. But really, every company is digital, right? Let's face it. And actually, products, people is at the center of being able to drive that change across the organization and show what good looks like.
That's a great take. We've got to move to our third speaker in a moment, Arthur. But have you a sort of a final soundbite that you would say? We're talking about main challenges. Is there one sort of takeaway you can give us?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, product managers and, in terms of building high performance teams, they're going to face 1,001 challenges in every single day, right? I think, that prioritization, that really critical focus on what is important, the alignment, and we didn't even get to talk about strategy and alignment of goals, just having that crystal clear focus of what is the most important thing is super important to be able to foster that high performance team.
That's a great takeaway, Arthur. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Our third guest is going to be Becky Yelland. Becky is the product director for Arenco Group and the owner of the Female Product Lead Group. Becky's topic is the steps to building a high performance product team. And again, hopefully we'll have a graphic on the screen in a moment. I love this graphic, and I know this is a bit of a reach, but I like the take on how we build products these days. And I believe we can build this thinking to building product teams. It's about progress, not perfection. The team has to deliver at every single stage. There's got to be a clear end game in mind. And we also need to bear in mind there's different scenarios to building product teams and high performance teams. Is it a turnaround? Is it some sort of transformation? Is it a startup? Is it a scale up? And hiring challenges for startups can often be the skill mix that's needed. Whereas a turnaround or transformation, there may be some sort of brand issue that we have to fight to overcome market preconceptions. Anyway, I'd like to introduce Becky now. Hi, Becky. If you could perhaps give us an introduction, and then the floor's all yours.
Of course, happy to, and thanks for having me. So yeah, I've been in product for 23 years now. I sort of round it down rather than round it up now, which is embarrassing. And the way I sort of talk about my journey in product is I started in a product role, but before product was even a title. So I used to get really weird titles like executive producer and service manager and strange things like that, which actually goes back to James's point earlier around, we built this up from a delivery function. And, I learned very quickly that I wasn't fit for project management. I did a very brief Prince sort of course and decided it wasn't for me. And then Agile came along and prevented us from having to spend an eternity in Word documents that were 300 pages long. So I was very happy about that. I've moved around quite a lot in my career. I've done media, I've done finance, I've done B2B, B2C. I've done lots of different things, but I sort of reached a bit of an inflection point a couple of years ago where I was sort of midway, I guess, through my career. At least I hope I don't have another 20 to go. God, can you imagine working till I'm 70? And I realized that I was really in need of a mission, something that was tangible day to day, as opposed to something that was, part of a founder's story, but wasn't actually something that could be felt day to day in the work that we were doing and the reason that we were doing it. And so I made the decision to move into climate tech, and I'm now in my second startup within climate tech. I work for a company called Arenco, and we're on a mission to reduce the carbon at grid level globally. So really briefly, we take energy that's curated from renewable sources such as wind, tidal, and solar, and we store it in batteries that are very, very big across, the size of a football pitch that cost about £25 million to build. And our tech is the tech that enables our customers to be able to manage those very complicated sites and monetize them. So people trade in energy, as you may or may not know. And so we have software that enables those sites to be traded to the best of their ability to increase and protect return on investment for our customers who are, as I said, investing huge amounts of money in this tech. So the world's changing, and clean energy and the mission for clean energy is something that's really interesting. It's a massively growing industry. And life at Arenco is incredibly exciting. I'm enjoying it very much indeed. And I'm happy to talk about building product teams. We are hopefully going to be doing that shortly here.
Okay. I mean, please do email me, but moving forward, what yours are the steps to building a high performance product team, and like you've done this loads of times, so there's a few sort of themes, but are there any things you'd like to sort of lead with? I mean, the floor's yours.
Of course. So I think like the first thing you have to think about is when's the time to grow? When's the time to enhance? And if you are going to enhance, how are you going to enhance? And then I guess you need to think about the best fit candidates for the context that you're in. So like you already alluded to, is it a startup, a scale up, a big corporate? You know, what is it that you need in order to grow? But for me, I also think about the existing product team, their skills and experiences, the level of domain expertise they've got, the level of commercial nonce they have, and the ability to be able to either understand how to build a product that's going to, you know, achieve good ROI, the amount of data savviness they've got, whether they're someone who's an analytical thinker or creative, sort of big bets type of person, and also the org maturity. So how mature is the org? How important is it you've got people who've got good experience in products, so they come in and help being an advocate and an evangelist of the product function? Because no matter how long we've been doing this, I still see conversations that happen at every level in every org where people are still asking the question, like, what's product for? Why do we need you? And, you know, can't we cope without you? And why do you need product hierarchy? Can't we just have a load of product people that just work with the team? Why do we need, you know, people leading the team, or levels of people leading the team, et cetera, et cetera? So it's really a lot of work to do still, I think, to educate people around the value that product brings in an org. So sometimes you need good people who can come and be a part of that conversation, rather than people who are still trying to figure it out and are very easily unseated in terms of the value of product. You know, there's been lots of chat, hasn't there, in the industry recently, following Brian Chesky's comments at the Config 23 conference, you know, where he's sort of making challenging statements around product being the general manager of their function and blending the role of product marketing and product management. And I know from my network that that's caused some ripples and some uncertainties and some anxiety. So I've been thinking about that quite a lot in terms of the impact it has when people think that things are changing or think that the role isn't valued. And I think that's really important. You bring in that maturity into the team when you're hiring for them. And then I guess the last piece is around onboarding, and from onboarding through to high performing. And I think I'll always think about how to increase the levels of synergy within the team. So I really lean into what I believe are the strengths of how I can lead as a female leader in tech a lot. That's something that I got told once, which I think is amazing, that I over-index on the softer skills of management, which I just, you know, as a statement, just beggars belief, really. But you know, we are it's our responsibility as leaders within a team to make sure that we're aware and conscious of the anxiety of growing a team and what that could have on the people that are already there. Like, are you leveling someone because you're growing a team and you're introducing a hierarchy? And what's that impact going to be from them? Making sure that you're aware of that. And I think as well, just being really conscious of promoting the value of bringing people in that think differently and have different experiences. So it's all about saying, you know, you can peer learn and you can experience, you know, you can learn from your peers and you can learn from your manager. So I always look to hire people that I'm going to learn from, right? I always use the analogy of, like, I've had 3 kids, but that doesn't make me a freaking midwife. I couldn't help anyone else have a child. So I just know what I know about being a mum. And I think it's the same in terms of product. I've done what I've done. I've been where I've been, and I've learned the things that I've learned. I've seen the things that I've seen. Doesn't mean I know everything about product. And other people joining are going to add value to that whole group, and making sure that everyone goes along that journey with me and is excited about the ingestion of new ideas and thoughts and ways of thinking, as opposed to threatened by them or concerned by them.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a strange phrase, that sort of over-indexing. It's sort of, you know, hey, you're trying to get people to buy in too much.
I don't know. I mean, it was a strange time in my life.
It seems like a strange comment when you think about how much time and energy is invested in hiring the right people, in retention strategies as well. And we all know that change is like unpleasant. like change is unpleasant to everybody, and we get lots of these buzzwords like, oh, change is a constant, but an unplanned or unexplained change can be quite frightening. So I find that a strange comment. But moving back
go on.
I was just going to say, moving back to some of your sort of onboarding to high performing, can you kind of expand on that a little, perhaps? And when you're talking about building a high performance team, it seems that a lot of what you look to do is sort of look at, well, what have I got? How do I build these people up? How do I add value to these individuals? Which I'd imagine from someone being in your team must be just amazing to think, this is someone who's going to develop me, not just sort of overlook me. How do you start off with all of that then, and kind of how important is that to you, and what sort of approach do you take?
I think that's what I was talking about in terms of when do you enhance or grow, and how do you enhance? So looking at the skill sets that the team have got already. So I mentioned that already in terms of, are they very, very tech savvy or very commercially savvy, or a bit of both? What's the blend that you're looking for, and how can you bring people in that are going to facilitate all the team growing as one, with a fairly high level of synergy. I think I also try to bring the team along the journey of hiring as well. So what does good look like for each level that we're hiring for? So what does good look like in a head of for us? What does good look like for a lead or a senior? And making sure the whole team are behind it in terms of making those statements. And as we go out to market looking for candidates, making sure that they're a part of the process. I think peer review at candidate interview stage is incredibly important. Making them a part of that journey, making them a part of the decision making process as well. So genuinely, when I've been in hiring in the past, I might be the hiring manager and therefore the ultimate decision maker, but I'll always, even if the talent team or the internal processes don't ask for a roundtable discussion at the end of the stages of interview, I'll always ask for one, and make sure that everybody is coming together and having that conversation. If there needs to be a decision maker, I'll be that decision maker, but I'd rather we all agree that the person that we're talking about is the right fit for the role. And then I'll also look to creating a level of buddying up with the teams as well. So if you bring someone in, creating a buddy, it's your job and responsibility to help onboard this person and get them hit the ground running and make sure they understand the role that they're doing to a certain extent. Their line manager obviously is very much a part of that, but not always are candidates able to be honest with the line manager around the things that they're nervous about or feel unsure about. And so a buddy is able to lean in and just support them in some of those things, because they're on high alert, aren't they? They're on their 3-month, 6-month probation. They don't want to be seen to not know what they want to do. So having a buddy or a safe space where they can have those conversations without any judgment, I think is really important. And I think, Arthur already touched on psychological safety. And that for me is a really important part of our role as leaders, is looking to create an environment of psychological safety within the team. So for me, I think the product role has changed a lot over the years. We used to make it up. We used to use our gut, and we used to make decisions, and we used to be bold in those decisions. And then data came along, and data started driving decisions. And now data is the evidence that we need to make all decisions sometimes. And I think there's a level of fear in people that they don't feel that they can innovate safely and make decisions and be bold. And so for me, I think it's my role always to make sure that my team feel emboldened to make those decisions together, collaboratively, in partnership. They can sense check each other, the ideas that they have, and make sure that they can bounce ideas off in a safe space without any judgment. So supporting them if something goes wrong and championing them when something goes right is very much something that I'd encourage.
Okay. And I think we've probably got another 3-4 minutes then. So are there any other bits you'd like to cover, such as like common scenarios, building teams out? You've talked about psychological safety. Is there anything else you'd like to sort of expand on that at all? Or?
Well, yeah, one of the other things that I've done recently, so I've really been looking to, like 20 odd years in, how can I give back? So I mentor people at the moment. I try and spend as much time as I can giving support to people that are looking to either grow their career or to maybe an inflection point themselves. I've also joined a community called the Product Mind, which is a Oh, thank you. Yes, I forgot about this, which is a free community that's available to product professionals globally. And the idea behind the Product Mind and the founders that started it last year, Graham and Jax, was to create a space. It's a Slack community at the moment, but we're looking to grow it and evolve and bring thought leaders in and create a content strategy and roadmap that's going to really lean in some of the challenges people are having. Because I think the role of product has massively changed over the years. Like I said, it's become really complex. I did a graphic a couple of months ago for an article I wrote, which was talking about the product tech industry and the noise and the confusion and the amount of people that sort of suffer from imposter syndrome. No matter if they've been in the industry for like 20 years, they're still feeling like they can't keep up with all of the noise and the latest methodologies and stuff. And all of that leads into sort of high levels of anxiety, I think, for a lot of people. You don't feel like you can be pragmatic in your approach, that you need to overcomplicate. And if you're not surrounded by people who support you or know that you can be slightly more pragmatic, and you don't have to have the most complicated prioritization rubric there is on earth, you can just sometimes make a simple trade-off decision, and you just don't know that that's okay. This is the place for people like that. If you don't have people in your teams to support you, you can come and join us here. As I said, it's a Slack community at the moment. You can come in, you can have peer-to-peer support, just lessons learned from careers that are shared. And then we're going to be looking at creating some themes as a response to a survey that we're just about to send out. So if you want to be a part of our content, future and strategy, if you join now, you'll be able to give us your feedback and input on the things that challenge you in the survey that we're just about to send out. We've already got about 400 people, I think, in the group.
I think just if no one's noticed, it's productmindcommunity.com. Is that the website to go to?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant stuff. And yeah, we've noticed you're one of, we obviously do mentors, and we've noticed that you're, I guess, one of our high performers there in terms of...
I didn't know you could turn this off, Doug, like I told you. I didn't know you could make yourself unavailable, and people kept asking, and I'm not very good at saying no to that sort of thing.
No, you've been great. You've been great. So I think we need to move on to Nam now. But is there a sort of a final take, Becky, before we say goodbye? And look, thank you so much for your insight today. It's been amazing.
I think my only final thought, Doug, would be, look, there's lots of people out there who give really prescribed and sort of perfected view of what the ultimate aim could be, based on methodologies or principles, or like a purist view of how to do things. And I think I'm just here to try and say to people, look, just be pragmatic. Don't try and make a round peg fit in a square hole, and I don't think you say it that way around, do you? You say square peg round hole, but the point being, don't try and force something just because it feels like you read it somewhere or you did it before and it worked. You've always got to think of the context. So grow the team, enhance the team in the context you're in, and don't try to just do something by rote or do something because you think that might be the right way to do it. Always be mindful of the context you're in.
Thanks, Bex. Thank you, Bex, and thanks again for coming on and all your help.
Pleasure. Bye.
Take care. So our final guest is Namrata Samar. Namrat is the CPO of Inter University Partnerships. She's the founder of Women in Product UK, and she's also a founding member of Chief. Today, Nam is going to talk about how to lead a high-performance product team. And we've helped build a lot of high-performance product teams and interviewed thousands of product professionals at all levels. And we regularly speak with product leaders. And a really common theme is the benefits of mentorship here. And at the beginning of the year, we set up a product mentorship scheme called Partner Up. And the feedback's been amazing, both from mentors and mentees. It's on the screen now if anybody would like to take a look. And if you go to the website, you'll see there's over 100 mentors that you can choose from, including some of the speakers today. Some studies by Wharton's and Forbes on mentorship show that mentors are promoted 6 times more often and mentees are promoted 5 times more often than people not on mentoring programs. The same study found that mentoring programs dramatically improve promotion and retention rates for both minorities and women from 15% to nearly 40% as compared to non-mentors. And 76% of people think mentors are important, but only 30% have one. So please go to the website, take a look, pick a mentor, and good luck. I'd like to bring Nam in now. Hi, Nam. Perhaps you could introduce yourself and take it a bit from here.
Thank you, Doug. It's absolute pleasure to be here, and I've been patiently listening to all the other speakers this evening. It's been a delight. So hi, everyone. My name is Namrata. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Into University Partnerships. We are a global higher education company, and we operate globally in more than 23 countries. So yeah, I mean, I've been in product for about more than 10 years now, I think between 10 to 15 years. Started my career as a software engineer right out of college. So I was a computer science graduate, then became a programmer for a few years, then changed gear a little bit. I did my MBA and then kind of moved away from, hands-on coding. And that's when kind of the product management journey started for me here in the UK a long time ago now. And I've worked in different types of companies, but I think the highlight of my career has been in healthcare, education, and media. These are the three industries I love. And I have done other things, but I think more or less it's been somewhere aligned to these three industries. And just like some of the other speakers tonight, I've worked at, for B2C as well as B2B products. I've done B2G as well, which means government, well, NHS in a way, it's public sector. And yeah, everything in between, web and apps and, all sorts of things. And I think, yeah, I've really seen product management as a discipline grow, I would say, over the years. It was very different 10 plus years ago, I think you'll agree, Doug. And where we are today, it's actually, it's different. It's really different. It's changed a lot, I think, for the better. And yeah, really, really happy to speak. It's a topic very close to my heart.
So your subject is how to lead a high performance product team.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a big question.
Yeah, it's a very broad, I think, topic, right? But I think I'll keep it very simple because it's all about leading by example. You need to be a high performance leader. It's not about telling your team that you need to be high performance and brilliant and all those things. I think you have to show the team. You have to inspire the team by being an amazing manager and being an amazing high performing team member first. That's very important. And that is something I have learned from some of my, managers in the past, but that's what I try to practice wherever I go. And I go to larger companies, lead transformation programs for them and try to make the company's product led and whatnot. And these are difficult jobs. These are not easy jobs. And I'm often brought into a company by the board as a change agent. So these are hard roles, and I think what I try to do generally is try to be the person that I want my team to become, so try to lead by example, try to be a great manager, super hands-on, but also at the same time, I'm always a team member first. This is what I say to my team members always, that, I'm one of you first, I'm a team member first, and I'm a leader, that's my secondary job. I'm first and foremost a team member. And I think that immediately breaks barriers, that immediately creates an open door policy within the team. And I lead quite a big team at the moment, extremely multifunctional. So I actually lead product management, design, data science, market research, insights, CRM, community, also into startups. So there's a lot of different teams, as you can imagine. It's a very broad unit. Sometimes I don't even know what my job title should really be, because it's actually quite broad, which is great because I'm very grateful. I can do a really, a lot of things every day. Every day looks different for me, which also means that, I deal with different types of leaders. So my VP of CRM is not the same as my VP of product, for example. There are similarities, but different styles of working and different objectives, So I think keeping everybody kind of focused on our OKRs, on the vision and mission of the company, and most importantly, our targets, our goals, I think that can be quite difficult. But at the same time, what I try to do, again, as I said, I try to understand what each of my teams are actually doing on a day-to-day basis. And I think when you do that as a leader, as I said, it breaks the barriers. But at the same time, you know exactly what challenges they are going through on a day-to-day basis. And once you understand the challenges, my expectations from them becomes way more realistic, versus me not understanding what they do on a day-to-day basis, So for me, leadership for me really is about being part of the team. I practice democratic style of leadership. That's what I always say, which also means that it's really open door policy. People can come to me with ideas, and, right from an intern to my most senior VP, everybody has direct access to me on a daily basis.
So it's interesting. You've said, you try and be what you want them to be.
Yes.
Okay. How do you become that? Like, what's helped you? You weren't born this way, right?
No, my God, no way. I don't think any of us were. I mean, it was, the whole life is about, I think, learning. Every job is also a learning. This is my second CPO role.
Yeah.
Very different, I would say, from my first one. So first one is a lot of experimentation. I think the second one, I'm a little bit more mature in the CPO world, I would say, and probably the future roles, I'll be better. Every job should be better, hopefully. I mean, there are three things, when you touch upon, leading high performance teams, but also motivating teams, which is, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
There are three things really, and it's like the three P's that I call it. The first is purpose. Why are you here? Why am I here in the first place? Why am I working in this company? Why do I have to get up every morning being excited about my job? So the why is very important, trying to find your why. So the purpose is very important. The second thing I would say is progression. So if the team sees a clear line of progression within the organization, you get a motivated set of people within the team immediately, because they know that, okay, I can grow in this company, I can become something, and so there is a clear kind of line of progression, which is very important. And I think the third thing would be rewards, like pay, incentives, rewards. All these things are actually quite important as well. And incentives and rewards, it's not just a financial thing, but it's also about being valued as a team member. So these are the three things that I try my best. Wherever I go, I try to bring that purpose, progression, pay. I think these three things are very important if you really want to build a high performance team, but also keep them. Because bear in mind, if you have extremely smart people in your team, which I have, fortunately, smart people get all the jobs in the world.
Yeah.
How do you get smart people engaged? How do you keep them engaged and motivated? And how do you make them work for you for long term? So I think that could be a huge challenge in itself. So for me, I think practicing some of those kind of frameworks that I bring in from a people management perspective, I think that is really important. But also working closely with your HR team, with your people team, in kind of changing few policies if possible, maybe bringing new reward system or incentive system in place, new performance management. So stuff like that, I think as a C-suite operator, that I can quite easily do. Actually, I do have the leverage, I do have the influence. So I try to use all of that in making sure that my team remains motivated and my high performance team doesn't vanish in a period of few months.
Yeah, but I guess as well, though, there's a point where maybe you sort of say, you can have an honest relationship with the team where you're sort of like, I'm part of your career. You're going to be with me for 3 years or this period of time. And in that time, you're going to get from X to X, and you can almost build a kind of a alumni network. People don't have to work for you for life these days. Right. So
I love how you said that, because my previous company, when I left the company, we actually created our own WhatsApp group. So my previous team is in a WhatsApp group, which is like my own alumni.
Oh, wow. There you go.
I know that's just a little thing I kind of created. And I think, and that's what I mean by progression, right? Because you have to understand that people are not going to stay with you forever, especially if they're really high performers. They will find better opportunities and better careers somewhere else, and they might move on. But I think, again, that gives me as a manager, a lot of satisfaction as well, that I'm able to build these careers. I'm able to grow these careers, So I think for me, that's really, really important. You touched upon mentorship just, a few minutes ago as part of the intro. And that is so important, because I have had mentors in my life, not necessarily from product world, but they've been kind of leadership level mentors. And I've had them as part of like company-wide mentoring programs, which is quite common in kind of large-scale organizations. But I've also had during my MBA days, one of my senior MBAs, he was my mentor, for example, when I was very new in this country. And that helped me quite a lot, right? So I think mentoring has benefited me a lot, and I give back. So I mentor a lot of people. I have done that for over the years. And Women in Product UK, which is, my community for female product professionals in the UK. The whole kind of vision behind that actually is to grow careers, ultimately. It's to build that pipeline of very strong, capable female product leaders who can do amazing things. Because when you look around us or look around you, you will see that the number of female leaders are actually dropping. It's steadily declining actually in the CEO level or C-suite levels, right? So there's a lot of people coming in, but at the top level, there's also kind of people declining, right? So the numbers are declining, and we can't afford that, right? So to make sure you have like a solid pipeline of strong, capable leaders, you have to build these communities. This is the way you grow the future.
But this, I mean, Chief does this as well.
Yes.
Do they not?
Absolutely.
So is your group's presumably specifically about product, but it's doing the same sort of thing as Chief. It's trying
absolutely, and I, of course, I'm a founding member of Chief. A few of us who are founding members, been with them since day one when they launched in the UK. And whilst Chief does it more at a senior level, so Chief is only VP and above. Bear in mind, of course, Women in Product UK is starting from APM, PM, from a graduate level PM up to CPO levels. There's a bunch of very senior leaders in Women in Product UK, but there's also a lot of APM. There's also a lot of MBA students actually who are going to enter product very soon. So right from the very beginning of their career journey till kind of at the top, like there is a very steady pipeline already, which I'd love to just kind of grow and grow and grow over the next few years. And hopefully, if I can even make a tiny percentage change or increase in the number of female leaders or the pipeline of leaders, I would have thought that I've succeeded, in that kind of women in product mission, right? And that's the reason I think mentoring and kind of community building, helping people move ahead in their careers, I think these things are very important if you ultimately want to build high performance teams. Because what is a team? Team is, one of my members from the community could be a team member, right? I mean, so the team ultimately is people from the industry, right?
Yep.
So they're going to be part of your team. So I think why not grow the industry altogether so that everybody gets a high performance team?
And do you see like a hard line between mentoring and coaching?
Yeah, so this is so funny because a few of us, I'm friends with a lot of great CPOs. A few of us were actually discussing this recently, I think this morning actually. There is a big difference actually, I would say, because a mentor is generally somebody who has done it, So so let's say as a CPO, I'm mentoring a few VPs and directors at the moment. Now I'm clearly their mentor. If they come up with a lot of them come to me with people management issues, or it could be a hard product problem to fix, or it could be organizational issues, like how do I build a new product team, for example. Now I can give them examples of my own life because I've done it before, and I know what works, I know what doesn't work as well. So I can be very honest with them and give them my perspectives. Now, whether or not they take that perspective, that's completely up to them. I don't think it should be prescriptive. A coach is very different. I've had exec coaches in the past. I don't have one at the moment, but I've had in the past. And through Chief, of course, I have access to some amazing coaches as well. Coaching is different. I mean, if I have to find a coach, that person doesn't need to be a CPO or something. It could be someone who's a career coach, just someone who helps kind of exec women, let's say, or exec people in general. And I might not be discussing product problems with that person, but I can definitely discuss people issues or leadership related issues. I could discuss something like anxiety or stress or whatever, So it's a bit more generic, I would say. And coaches generally don't give you solutions. They're more of a sounding board. It's like it's a safe place where you can speak and you can be vulnerable, I think, most importantly, because I think as leaders, we can't be vulnerable most of the times. We have to be quite strong and we want to be vulnerable, right? So I think a coach is a place where you can be actually quite vulnerable. So I think that's the benefit.
Yeah. So it's your own little safe space, I guess.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, good. So I think we're kind of coming to the end now, Nam. So before we go, again, is there any sort of final take? And again, look, thanks so much for your time and insight. It's been really great. Is there a final sort of takeaway for us that we can have?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the topic is very important, high performance teams. And my only advice, I think, to all the listeners, because I think there's a lot of amazing people logged in today watching us live. And I think my only advice would be what I said at the beginning, lead by example.
Yeah.
It works. It always works.
Brilliant stuff. Nam, thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing. I think we are probably going to get turned off now or switched off. So everybody out there, again, it's intelligentpeople.co.uk. We've got some amazing roles on the site. We've got a load of resources on the mentorship. Please do go and look. And thank you so much for your time this evening. It's been great.